Hey, it's Sam. I'm making another video here because we're dealing with so much stuff right now. There are so many very powerful configurations. This video is about polarization and balance and things split off, because there's a lot of that right now. There are several factors that are showing why everything feels so polarized and why extremes are getting contrasted through the magnification and the kind of velocity of polarization, polarizing things. First of all, I should say, and why we're really trying to keep things together and harmonize this tendency to split things off and turn them into extremes. First of all, one of the biggest things is the eclipse. The eclipse itself is a polarizing. It polarizes an issue. The lunar nodes exist along an axis of polarity. Now, there's a sign polarity involved, but more importantly for each individual, it's a house polarity. This is straight from Parashar, where he talks about the nodes modifying the planets they join as house lords, and then also as the houses along a house axis, because the houses show what comes into our life. So like for Taurus, it's 11th house and 5th house. For Capricorn, it's 3rd house and 9th house. So this polarity is set up by the nodes anyway, because they move into a house axis for about a year and a half. Then when we have the eclipse, it's like setting off it's like exploding a bomb. Like, it's kind of like when they go in there, it's like a fuse is sort of lit. So when the nodes went into Pisces and Virgo last year in September, it's like it lit a fuse. And then the fuse gets closer and closer, and then when the eclipse happens, particularly the solar eclipse, because that's the initiation of the energy, it like explodes the bomb, right? So it kind of burns for a while, and then bam, we have an eclipse. And it lights up that axis of polarity. So we have this polarizing happening right now around something. So something that might have seemed stable becomes very exploded. And again, it's not necessarily bad. Personal experience, I've had, and we could have really been feeling it the last month or so, especially when planets started going into Pisces and hitting Ketu. We had Mars and Venus go through there around the end of February, and like for myself, I had this whole kind of explosion of in my career, because it's in my 10th house. I have Jupiter there. When Ketu went into Pisces in September, it went over my natal Jupiter, and it started opening up this kind of awareness of some larger kind of theme and structure that I wasn't bringing out yet, but it just was kind of rumbling. And then when Venus went through and Mars, it actually ignited that whole kind of creativity. Like for myself, because I have a Gemini rising, when Venus went through there, it's like exalted Venus, my 5th house ruler, exalted in the 10th house with Ketu. It's on my natal Jupiter. So what it did is it exploded and blew up this whole kind of thing in my career in a good way. What it means is that I got to this whole new kind of breakthrough around this thing I'm doing now called quantum astrology, where I'm looking at the connections to Vedic astrology and quantum mechanics and neuroscience and bringing those things together. But those things were just kind of rumbling around in my unconscious for a while. And then when the transits hit before the eclipse, it kind of blew that thing up. So it was like really kind of confusing for a while, but then it sort of all came together. This is an example of where things getting blown up and polarized, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but again, that was before the eclipse happened, right? Or that's before we were right on the verge of the eclipse. So this quality of polarity and polarizing things is big with eclipses anyway. So we have this polarity happening, but we also have these energies that are trying to hold things together. Like, for instance, it's happening near the equinox. Equinox means equal night, and equinox is very much where we're trying to make energy equal and stable, very much like, because there's an equal amount of sunlight all over the earth, northern and southern hemispheres. And so when the equinox happens, it means that there's going to be more sun in the northern hemisphere for the next 6 months after the equinox. But on the day of the equinox, or as it's happening, there's an equal amount of sunlight all around the earth on that day. So we're trying to really feel balanced and harmonize energies and reconcile this sort of polarity within ourselves, because it's happening on the equinox. But instead, it's also happening on an eclipse, which is trying to blow things apart and polarize some issue around, like I said, like wherever Pisces is. That energy is getting, we're fixating on that end of the polarity at the expense of the other. But the thing is that the other one comes 2 weeks later when we have the lunar eclipse. So you need to be careful about blowing things up in that area and fixating on that area of Pisces. Like I say, for Gemini, it has to be with career, because I just used the example because it's a 10th house. I've done a lot of readings lately, and I've seen many of the Gemini people that I'm doing readings for, they're on the verge of blowing up their career because they're frustrated that their duties and responsibilities aren't what they want. Yet they don't really have anything in place to replace it. It's just kind of a pipe dream. So I'm saying, chill out. Wait before you blow up your career. Make sure you're not just doing it out of frustration. Because again, Mars is also there, making it even more polarized. So you need to be careful to not blow up that end of the node where the solar eclipse is happening, because 2 weeks from now, you're going to be trying to pick up the pieces on the lunar eclipse in Virgo, which is trying to gather all the pieces back together again. So whatever house axis that is, wherever Pisces is especially, you need to be careful to not be destructive right now. And again, you know, if someone wants to know how this is going to affect their sign, I have a member site where you can just spend a penny and, you know, you can get that information. But besides that, we're trying to hold it together because of the equinox. But the other reason is because, and it happened at the end of last week, is Venus left Pisces, where it's in its exaltation sign, and where it was also getting really stressed because it joined Mars and Ketu, and it went into Aries, where Venus in Aries is also incredibly polarized. Because Venus rules Libra, which is about harmony, harmonizing our energy with others, and it goes into Aries, and suddenly we're polarized and extreme around this area of compromise and respect, and again, ready to just sort of blow up stuff where we don't feel respected or appreciated or fixate on that kind of thing. And again, I'm seeing it. I've been doing so many readings this week. I mean, I've probably done 30 readings this week. Some of the eclipse readings that many of you got, and also regular consultations. And I mean, everybody is just kind of in this method of this mode of wanting to sort of like blow up whatever Venus rules, kind of especially wherever Libra is, because Venus is opposite Libra now in Aries, which is the most undiplomatic sign. And again, what typically happens with Venus and the snapback with Venus, especially when Venus is in Aries, no other place where it's this much, because Aries is so impulsive to want to destroy and lash out and like have a tantrum and just like blow the thing up, is that wherever we feel like we've compromised too much and we've tried but people didn't listen, and I've tried to be nice but you just don't listen, so and again, sometimes it happens in romantic relationships, but it can happen in career, it can happen in a lot of areas. But this kind of snapback and this kind of extreme comes into play. But again, it's very difficult for Venus energy, because Venus is where inherently we're trying to live in harmony with our desires and another person's desires, our needs, their needs, and we're trying to reconcile polarity with Venus. That's what Venus does with individuals. And it's obviously, it has its strength in Libra, where that's what's happening. But when it goes into Aries, when Venus is in Aries, this is just separate from any eclipse or anything else, or equinox. But when Venus is in Aries, it sets up a polarity where we tend to, especially if it's by transit, when it goes by transit, that's what it sets up. How much respect am I getting? And if I'm not getting it, I'm going to get it now. I'm going to demand it. When it's in someone's natal chart, of course, they really tend to have this aggressive quality to getting their desires fulfilled, which interrupts relationships, because relationships work because there's compromise. But when it goes there by transit, then it just, it doesn't last, for the person's lifetime or whatever. And even if someone has it in their birth chart, they get better with the energy, but that's the sort of tendency. But you look and see when the transit happened, which it happened last weekend, I think it was like last Thursday, Friday. So by the weekend, we were really very much in that sort of, okay, where's my respect? And again, it's an extreme because it's opposite Libra, where it rules. So anytime planets are opposite a sign they rule, it's operating from a shadow perspective. it is really like a shadow. It's like a reflection. It's like the shadow perspective is coming back. This is the case with any polarity, with any opposition. In Western astrology, they call it in its fall. You know, Vedic astrology doesn't have that in particular. They have the debilitation, but they don't necessarily call it a fall like the planet that's that's opposite a sign that it rules. But it's very legitimate, especially opposite whatever that sign is. So Venus in Libra is opposite, Venus in Aries is opposite Libra energy. And it can snap back really hard. Mars in Libra is opposite Aries energy. Not really opposite Scorpio energy, opposite Aries energy. Venus in Scorpio is opposite Taurus energy. So again, right now there's a lot of shadow Libra energy, as if we need any more of it. Libra has been hemmed now this whole year after having Saturn and Rahu in it. So anybody who has a lot of planets in Libra, I mean, I have my moon there, so Libra has just been getting smashed for several years. After Saturn goes through it, then Saturn and Rahu are there, then Saturn and Rahu hem the sign. Now Venus goes into Aries, which is like a kind of snapback about compromise, and so there's a lot of this now. And again, so I made this because of just this whole idea of things being so polarized right now. Eclipse is polarizing. Venus in Aries is polarizing. Solstice is unifying. Venus in general is unifying. So the fact that Venus in general is a unifying force that's going through a polarity itself is confusing. The fact that the equinox is a unifying quality happening on an eclipse is polarizing. You see? So we're like, pretty crazy. So I needed to make another video because this is a big thing that's going on. You know, plus we just had Saturn turn retrograde this week, which is also very internal and, you know, bringing up a lot of, you know, concerns about our long-term commitments and things. So I just thought I would bring this up. Plus I didn't really say anything about the solstice because it was happening in the midst of such an eclipse. But solstice is equinox. If I said solstice, please forgive me. Equinox. The equinox, very important time when we have that. It's really about equality and harmonizing. But then it's also very important because there's more light in the northern hemisphere for the next 6 months, which is huge. So feeling that hope. I've been feeling it all week in the midst of the intensity. It's like just feeling really good about a lot of things. And so I hope you are too. So maybe this helps. You know, Venus is going to go through Aries for another couple weeks. And then again, you know, we have this lunar eclipse in Virgo, so be careful to not like destroy everything just because of this like polarizing snapback reaction. And that's Aries. Aries is this reaction. Well, that's why Saturn is debilitated in Aries, because Saturn is about our long-term plans and commitments and structures, and Aries is impulsive. You know, so it's like very easy to touch off that kind of impulsive thing that destroys our plans. You can see it like if a planet is debilitated in a certain sign, it gives you an indication of that sign. You know, like Libra is very steady, very careful, and really calculates the consequences. You know, Saturn is exalted in Libra. So you can see this quality of Libra is really shown even by the fact you can see the higher qualities of Saturn in Libra because that's where it's exalted. You can see the lower qualities of Saturn in Aries, which is actually, it's mainly to destroy structure and foundation and things that we want to endure into the future. So be careful with impulsive, like, snapback responses around, certainly with our partners and with any kind of situations where we don't feel respected. It could be career. I've seen a lot of that too this week, because that's where we really put ourselves on the line. On a personal level, it's with relationships. On a professional kind of level of duty and responsibility, it's in, you know, it's at our job and things like that. So there's also enormous opportunities for those things. I'm seeing a lot of that as well. But we have to be careful and be intelligent about these, you know, about these times, because there's a lot of unconscious, subconscious stuff going on. That planet in the opposite side is really kind of a shadow. It's really operating in a kind of shadow thing, especially in an area like Aries or a sign like Aries. We can really snap back from the place of that shadow. And of course, the eclipses are totally subconscious shadow forces. That could be really disrupting our need for you know, for harmony and balance, which is shown by Venus and the equinox. So anyway, I hope this was useful